New York became a ghost town and a ghost nation on a ghost planet due to this coronavirus. This has been a grave milestone in public health war that New York has fight like crazy to get some type of control on this. As of today, as we've just had a couple of weekends of terrible deaths and what have you, there's over 100,000 people dead in the United States of America due to the coronavirus. Good evening and welcome to a special edition of the Queen's Grapevine. This is your host, Wallingford Lee. Tonight on the Queen's Grapevine, it's going to be the challenge of the coronavirus in the United States in general, and specifically in New York City. We're pleased tonight to have as a special guest, a veteran who has been on our program many times with great success. I'm talking about Mr. Jaime Estades, who happens to be an attorney and also a professor at NYU and Columbia University. Give us a great deal of pleasure and, of course, satisfaction to have him as a special guest tonight to talk about this dangerous virus that has affected the United States in general. Jaime, welcome to our program.
Always a pleasure. I miss you a lot.
Well, it's been a while, my brother. It's been a while, but I decided, because we got quite a few mail, to talk a little bit about this coronavirus, the effect that it has in New York. Let's talk a little bit. Were you surprised about this coronavirus, the way it invaded the United States? Were you surprised at all?
Yes, I think that most people were surprised about the magnitude of the effect that this virus had. We dealt with the Ebola virus during the Obama administration, which basically cannot compare to the level of infection with the coronavirus. This is a highly infectious disease that cannot compare with the most recent ones like the Ebola and others that happened at the beginning of this century and late 20th century in the 1990s. So yes, I was surprised. However, the scientists are not surprised. They were expecting this coming any moment. The signs have been there. The literature, the scientific literature on the issue of pandemics is there. So it was foreseeable that this was going to happen sooner or later. And that's for the most educated people in that area. And the government knew about it. For example, Obama, before he left the Obama administration, after dealing with the Ebola crisis, left a report for the Trump administration of 29 pages.
Actually, 69 pages, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so thank you. I knew it ended with a 9, but regardless of the amount, the warning was there. It was something that when the transition took place, they pinpointed to that document, and they said this is something that you need to take attention, and you need to prepare for something like this. Unfortunately, the first thing that the president does after he takes office is that he basically dismantled the pandemic office that was created under the Obama administration to deal with these issues. So they didn't read the report, and if they did read the report and they went to the president with it, the president ignored it. Not only ignored it, he dismantled the office that basically was in charge of basically dealing with this type of issues, and warned the president and warned the nation. So yes, as a lay person, I'm surprised, but the scientific community in the United States and outside the United States and the government of the United States, those who have been there for a long time, they are not surprised.
I'm a little bit shocking that the fact that you talk about that report that was left and that no one looked at it to understand the preparation for it. But it seems to me also, with everything that was going on, this thing started in China. And I don't think China was upfront with the president. And if he was told about it, I don't know when he was told, but I don't think China was upfront, because that was the first place that it hit.
Well, virus can start anywhere. they can start here in the United States, they can start in Europe, they can start in Asia, they can start anywhere. So it's not to blame. There are two issues: is whether the United States got informed on time. So let's deal with the first issue, which is the origin of the virus. It can start anywhere.
Okay.
And you cannot blame that in a specific country, group, or cultural group, or you cannot make that type of accusation, because it's a normal thing that has been happening for centuries. Pandemics have existed, and it has been documented since the Greeks, since Homer era. So this is nothing new. So you cannot blame the origin of the virus.
But I can tell you one thing that I'm proud of. I am proud of the doctors and the scientists here in the United States of America, especially in New York, how they're band together, how they work tireless to try to find some type of solution at this terrible virus, how they have worked night and day to save lives. I can't begin to tell you how great that we feel about the job that they have done trying to help New York.
Yes, and I agree with you, and everybody agrees with you. At 7 o'clock, soon you will hear through the window people clapping and playing instruments at 7 o'clock, like for 5 minutes. And I joined them with my cowbell too. So at 7 o'clock, I have to finish this because I have to start making noise. But I'm just sorry. It's just that I'm just joking. It's just that is basically to let the essential workers how much we appreciate the work they did. However, all this could have been prevented in the United States. The warnings were there. Even if the Chinese government did not warn the United States with enough time, that can be debated. But let's say that they didn't at all, and that they were not upfront. Let's say that still the United States had enough notice to deal with this issue. We are going to reach this week, by Friday or Monday, 100,000 deaths.
Well, I'm here to surprise you that today, Wednesday, it made 100,000 people who have lost. A lot of people is dead. Some of them are doctors, patients, people like you and I, you name it. How is it going to shape and affect our society today, in your mind?
Well, there is a whole transformation that has happened worldwide. So all societies are being transformed. All societies have to change. They are being changing. I don't think the world is going to be the same after this. For example, I teach in 2 universities as an adjunct professor. Everything has changed. The culture of teaching in the academic sectors, even in public schools. For example, we don't know if the next semester we're going to have the students in the classroom, and most likely, the classes are going to be online, like we're doing right now.
Okay.
So that's going to be the new world. The issue with things like that is that we need to adapt. Poor people don't have computers. Poor children that go to public schools don't have this time of technology that we're using right here. So the government has to invest on those children in order for them to get the computers, to get the resources that they have in order to adapt so they can continue the education that they were having. So these issues of inequalities have to change, because the virus doesn't discriminate in terms of poor or
rich,
people of color or anything. So therefore, the government now has a responsibility to make society and members of society more equal than before, because now it's not only the virus in terms of health issues, it's in terms of access to education, access to the economy. Everything is going to be done from now on, and it's going to accelerate, because we're going to get used to this. We're going to get used to this. But if the students, if the children don't have the resources that they need, don't have the access,
they can't work.
The next generation is going to suffer even more. So
Is that right that you mentioned that? Because as an educator, that's one of the reasons why I wanted you in the program. Because I noticed that my son, who's 16 years old, he's been working from home on the computer, and the frustration for a while before the computer, that some teachers couldn't handle computer, some students weren't able. But as you mentioned a few minutes ago, the entire world or society is going to change. Our needs are going to be different. Let's talk about not only the school system, even though we're not sure the New York City school system will open up on time in September because we don't know where things are going. Let's talk a little bit about the job. There has been a lot of furloughs, a lot of layoffs. Some people are working from home. Do you see in the next couple of weeks, months, once we open up, because New York hasn't opened up yet, do you see people working from home? Do you see major cutback in our society in terms of work and stuff like that?
yes, I think more work being done from home, but those are high skill jobs. Those
Okay.
are jobs that are basically with people with higher levels of education, that they can do their job from home, that is more specialized. They just have to use a computer, write reports, do studies, etc., and teach. But there are other jobs that you have to be on the street. And those jobs that you have to be in the streets, like firemen, policemen, people that sanitation, etc., all those jobs, they have to be on the streets and they have to be even more protected. But there
So
is
what you're
also,
saying is no cut in those type of jobs. The policeman, the fire
well,
department will always be active, will always be needed.
yes, we also in terms of agriculture, you know, with all these accusations and discrimination and prejudice against undocumented people, you know who's keeping the United States alive right now? Is the documented people. There is still working the land in the United States and producing the food that we're eating still today. So much for, you know, let's make America great again. You know who's making America great again? Is those undocumented immigrants who are working the farms in the United States with a very low pay, and they are not getting the protection that they need in terms of this virus, and nobody's counting them. You see? So everything comes down to the production of resources, living resources like food, medicine. Someone has to go to the field and get those essential elements that are needed in order to create medicines, in order to create food, and in order to drink. And those are low-skilled people with low wages.
What do you chalk it up as why certain people doesn't recognize that you need the farm workers, you need the people who are working in the field? And a matter of fact, the farm industry has been hurt a lot because of what's going on with this virus. Why is it that they haven't received the recognition?
Because it's part of the history of this country to blind itself to the real workers and to the people that keep the country alive, like in any other country in the world, are the working people that work in those essential jobs, especially in agriculture, especially in factories that are low skills. Those are the ones that are producing what we are consuming now from home, but we are not producing it ourselves. We're dependent on them. Now, how many times do you hear about them? Those are the real heroes are not born in the United States. The real heroes are born in Central America and in other countries, because they are the one producing the essential resources that we need in order to survive. So like I said before, so much for Make America Great Again. You don't know who has Make America Great Again. Since the beginning of this country were the slaves that basically make this country great, were the lands that were stolen from Native Americans, the undocumented that came here looking for a better place to live. Those are the ones who have been creating the richness of this country, but it has been stolen for those on the top.
Once you have said that, there are those watching this program is going to say to you, look at what the president did. He went out of his way to help people who are unemployed by getting an extra check of $600 a week. He has gone out of his way and made a special program, a PPA, the SBA program, to make sure small industries have enough funds to pay their workers and don't lay them off. What would you say to that?
Well, that's BS. That's not true. There have been monies being sent to businesses, small businesses, etc., but it's not enough, cannot be compared. So he's not saying, he's saying that is for them to have enough in order to survive. That's why he says the money that people are getting, if they are getting it, because a lot of people haven't got it yet, is not enough for people to survive. However, the corporations have gotten billions and billions of dollars, his friends, billions of dollars.
So you're saying to me if the funds did not go to the needy, that's what you're saying?
They go, but they are not enough. They're not enough. Not only they're not enough, those monies still haven't been received by many of the people who are expecting them, And then you have to apply for unemployment. So you have to go through that process. So what happened when the check is over? Because, that check was for a limited amount of money for a limited amount of time.
Yes.
There is right now a piece of legislation that is being proposed by Congress, by the House of Representatives. And basically, is to help people with food stamps. Because the food stamps are being cut. There are all these people who are being left out, and the administration is basically making everything impossible in order to reach an agreement to pass this second one, because it's more directed to working people.
Okay, when we get back in the Queen's Grapevine, we're going to continue talking about the Small Business Administration and those in need, because you touch a very sensitive point that affects a lot of people. We'll be right back in the Queen's Grapevine as we continue to talk about the big challenges that the coronavirus has brought to New York City and to the United States in general. We'll be right back.
A lot of times, doctors and nurses almost feel invulnerable, but it's hard for them to see their colleagues being admitted to the hospital and not have that sense of invulnerability shattered. I'm Sherry Fink. I'm a correspondent at the New York Times. Many years ago, I went to medical school. Victor Blue, a photographer, and I spent some time at Brooklyn Hospital.
So what is he on drug-wise?
This hospital, just within the last week, had almost doubled the capacity to treat patients in the intensive care unit.
The opportunity for beds here are pretty significant. Okay, next.
The staff members from all over the hospital were helping out. So there were nurses from the cardiac catheterization lab. There were podiatry physicians. There was a neurosurgery physician assistant helping out. I think what really stood out to me was the toll on the medical providers and the fact that so many of the staff members are sick. One of the hospital's employees was admitted to the intensive care unit while I was there.
Can we do that for our nurses, one, because they actually go through the most PPE because they have so many tasks they have to do.
Dr. Josh Rosenberg, he's an intensive care unit doctor. I feel like he was bouncing on his toes the whole time.
Easier, and I waste less PPE, and that way I'm in all the rooms and done.
And then I found out that he himself had been out, and this was his first day back. It just highlights how brave the people are for showing up every day and doing their work.
The blood gas looks pretty darn skippy.
In one case, a patient, their cardiac status, the ability of the heart to pump blood everywhere that it's needed, was starting to have some problems. So in this case, they were starting what's called a central line, and that way they could administer certain drugs that could help the heart. And of course, anytime that you're close to a patient and performing a procedure, it can be a risk for the healthcare providers. But it's not all doom and gloom. The doctors, the nurses, the staff members, they're trying not to let it get them down, trying to focus on the task at hand. Obviously, this is super difficult, and when they go home at night, a lot of them describe just grappling with everything that they're seeing and experiencing. But in the moment, they're keeping each other's spirits up. They're going about the work.
Yep, I'll take care of that.
When I would ask the health professionals who I was speaking with at the hospital whether they had anything else to say, whether they had a message for the larger public, their message has been stay home, protect yourself, reduce your risk, follow the recommendations so that you minimize the chance that you will get sick, and that helps them be able to take care of people who really need that help.
And we're back here in the Queen's Grapevine talking about the coronavirus, the effect that it has in our society, especially in New York City, in the entire United States, but mostly New York City, which happens to be the capital of the world. Just seeing it, Times Square totally empty, everyone locked up. The subway had to cut service late at night. The amount of deaths and you know the havoc that it caused. I mean, you brought up a lot of interesting points when we talk about the small business, the needy, and the farmer. Where do you see this havoc of this virus? Do you think it goes further done than the small business? How is it going to affect our economy?
Well, it's affecting the economy. The economy is practically in a depression. The depression of the 1930s was officially a depression when it hit 20% unemployment. This already is already there. There is already a depression in this country.
We have over 20 million people who are unemployed right now.
Yes. So we're talking about a depression. Now, this is going to take time in order to return. This is not going to be, you see, the president said that this was going to be fixed by Memorial Day. You know, Memorial Day passed already.
It's about 3 days ago.
You know, this is not over. There are places where the virus is increasing, in others it has been normalized. People are now going out. You will see the reports in the next 2 weeks of how more people have been infected since the reopening of the country and the different states. New York is being more cautious.
Extremely cautious, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and here in New York, basically everything is being reopened gradually, step by step by step.
Another credit should go to the governor of New York, Cuomo, for being cautious in opening these things. I mean, he doesn't want to do it crazily.
Well, after what we have been through, you know, I think that you learned your lessons. And I think you have seen even Republican governors on TV basically criticizing the president of the United States. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. There was a Republican, the governor of North Dakota, practically crying on TV, begging people to please put their mask on. North Dakota, which there are not that many people there, you know, and he basically cried. I don't know if you have seen it on TV.
I did.
Republican contradicting the president of the United States. Even Republicans are upset about the measures. So the point is this. This is the ridiculous thing about the administration, the White House administration. If you want the economy to return, and to return with enough force to become the economy that it was before the pandemic, you want to make sure that the reopening is done with a process that have all the guardrails to make sure that it happens well, so the economy will recover without the virus returning. The president is not doing that. It's in his benefit to make sure that everybody wear a mask. It's in his benefit that everybody wears gloves. It's in his benefit that there is social distancing. He's doing exactly, and his administration is doing exactly in practice the opposite of what it has to be done just to show a macho type of presence on TV. So to basically satisfy his narcissism. No one is buying that behavior, even Republicans. So he needs an economy to return in order to get reelected. And he's doing everything to sabotage the reopening and the improvement of the economy, and doing it in a well-done way by his behavior and by the message that he sent out there, refuting everything, every study that scientists have presented to him, the scientists that work with him, they have advised him. They're going crazy. You can see Fauci and you can see the scientists around him every time he talks like they want to have a heart attack.
Well, I think what happened to him that he got extremely aggressive. He felt that this is the greatest nation in the world, and I agree with him with that. But he wants to open up things, and I think to open up things, you have to have proper testing. You have to have a plan, and I think that's the reason why New York is doing it slowly. I think Florida opened up, a good portion of Florida has opened up, and a couple other states have opened up. But I think Dr. Fauci said something very interesting. When the winter gets here, it's going to get worse. Is that the same thing that you think also?
Well, I'm not a scientist, but I trust scientists.
Okay.
Because they are not political people. I mean, they may have their own political affiliations, but as scientists, they are going to trust the data that they collect through the studies that they make. And that is not partisan. You have to trust that data. And the president is not trusting the data at all whatsoever. He has criticized, he's even saying that it's not true that 100,000 people have died in the United States. Now, where did he put that information out? Nobody knows. He just says that. He just wants to contradict because he wants to accelerate. He's so desperate to become re-elected that he wants to start the economy again now, thinking that the economy is going to be the same as it was 3 months ago.
No, it will take time. No matter when you started, it's going to take time to turn around the economy.
No, but
it's going to take a lot of time to do it.
You see, but Lee, the point that I'm trying to make is that the actions that the White House is taking is going to make things even worse than the way this started before.
Well, maybe you're right, but you got to remember, it seemed to me like most of the senators, Republicans, are behind the things that he wants to do.
Yeah, but it's basically the senators, the Republican senators who are running in 2012, in 2020, in November, who depend on the base of Trump in order to get elected. So they're not going to contradict him. They're not going to contradict him, but that's politics. That has nothing to do with the data, with the scientific data.
So where do we go from here?
Because they're putting the politics over science. That's the problem.
So where do we go from here? That's a key component. Where do we go from here based on all of the above?
Well, the leadership is wrong. So where do we go from here is that there has to be a big change in November in terms of leadership in this country in order to bring some sanity. That doesn't mean that the partisanship is going to end. It's going to continue. But always, Republicans and Democrats, they always, if something that they did good was that they always put science over politics. This is the first time that this hasn't happened.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I know there's an election coming up in November. It's going to be a tough one because Mr. Trump has solid backing. He seems to think that the Mideast and the South are with him. So I think he's going to come up against Biden. That's going to be a tough one. I don't know who will win. I'm not into the prediction business, so I'll keep it simple. But no matter who takes over, it's going to be very difficult to turn this thing around. This virus has hurt us in more ways than one. The economy, society, you mentioned the school system, you mentioned small business. It's a very, very tough one. Jaime, I just want to take this opportunity on behalf of the family of the Queen Grapevine to tell you thank you so much for imparting your thought process, which was very, very strong and to the point. We are in trouble right now. We are in trouble because of this virus, and we pray that our scientists and doctors will find a cure for it. And we don't have words to thank the people working in a hospital, nurses, the doctors, them saving life, and again, and all those who really care. And again, thanks to my audience for watching this program, and I hope it has been informative to you. Good night.
Thank you.